Hello again. There is something immensely flattering about the idea that anybody at all would go to the trouble of making a video about me and even producing false documents to lend a spurious authenticity to the production. It does make one suspect, of course, that Rybo Ramovich is a man with too much time on his hands, but it gave my wife and I a bit of a laugh, so I suppose his efforts were not entirely in vain. The background to this is that a fellow going by the name of Jerry Kruitz commented here yesterday asking if I was a Jew. Not the first time that this question has been asked, obviously. He said that he had been looking at my books and found that I was often anti-British and, in his words, certainly insanely anti-German. This is a bit puzzling because I've never written anything about Germany or the Germans at all. As for being anti-British, well, I suppose that my book Commuting, The History of a British Way of Life, could be taken as an attack on the British. I have a book on Amazon too called The Colchester Book of Days, which is an almanac of important dates in the history of Britain's oldest city. It's about Britain, but I wouldn't really say that it's anti-British. The guide to Kingston-on-Thames I wrote as well is fairly neutral about the British. We must hope that Jerry Kruitz tells us a little more about this, what he means by all this about anti-British and anti-German. So this is an invitation. Jerry Kruitz, if you're out there, please comment and tell me what I've written that's insanely anti-German. Looking at the video which our friend Mr. Ramovich has produced, and I'm sure he will not be offended if I remark that Ramovich sounds a good deal more like a Jewish name than Webb, we see that fake tweets and Amazon pages have been produced in which my name is given as Webstein. The tweet that he's mocked up is about Kristallnacht. I need hardly add that I've not made such a tweet. Nor do I have a Twitter account in the name of Webstein666. That's the mark of the beast, for those of you who didn't catch the allusion. I have not the slightest objection to anybody thinking that I am a Jew. Why should I? The idea that one may identify Jews by the size of their noses, which both Jerry Kruitz and Rybo Ramovich subscribe to, is marvellously quaint. The Nazis had an entire department devoted to measuring noses and trying to establish a correspondence between Jewishness and nose size. Alas, they were unable to find any sort of connection. Some of the purest Aryans had gigantic noses, and they found rabbis with noses which were barely visible to the naked eye. The thumbnail to this video shows a man having his nose measured in this way to try and establish his ethnicity. It's perfectly true that my nose is large, and because I use a cheap camera which I have to be close to in order for the microphone to pick up my words, there's an effect called foreshortening which emphasises the size of it. As for my being Jewish, I've explained before that I'm not a Jew. 50 years ago, it was quite common for young Europeans and Americans to spend time in Israel on a kibbutz. It was a forerunner, in a way, of today's gap years. Most of these young men and women were not Jewish, but an awful lot of them fell in love with the country and became fervent supporters of Israel after living there. I think that it is because I spent time in Israel in this way, as I've mentioned on here, that some people have got it into their heads that I'm a Jew. That and the size of my nose, of course. I do hope that Jerry Kruitz and the estimable Mr. Ramovich, nice normal British name there, will entertain us with more of these speculations, and in particular explain all this stuff about my writing anti-British and insanely anti-German books.